She stood in the doorway like the storm had chased her all the way to my apartment and only stopped once she reached me. Her hair was messy from the rain, strands clinging to her cheeks, and her hoodie, once light gray, was now darkened, soaked through. But it was her eyes that held me still, softer than I'd ever seen them. Tired, yes, but also hopeful in that fragile, quiet way people get when they're asking for something they're not sure they deserve. "Is there space left in your bed?" she asked. It wasn't flirtatious, it wasn't teasing, it wasn't even embarrassed. Just honest, completely painfully honest. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, like saying it louder might make the moment crack apart. I didn't even pretend to think about it, there always was. I stepped aside, letting her in. She passed me slowly, almost cautiously, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be here, even though she'd walked through this place 100 times before. Water dripped from her sleeves onto the floor, each drop sounding too loud in the silence we shared. "Rough night?" I asked gently. She didn't answer at first. She just stood near the couch, hugging her arms around herself, as if trying to hold together everything that had been falling apart long before the rain started. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled in a way she tried to hide. "I didn't want to be alone tonight." Those words, they hit deeper than anything else could have. She could have gone anywhere. She chose here. She chose me. I reached out, took her hand carefully, and felt how cold she was. "Come on," I said. "You'll warm up faster in bed." She let out a small breath, half relief, half exhaustion, and followed me to the bedroom. The covers were still messed up from earlier, the kind of comfortable chaos that only comes from a place someone actually lives in. She slipped under the blanket slowly, like she was afraid she might break something, or maybe afraid she'd break herself. The moment she settled, I felt something shift. The room seemed warmer, quieter, safer, like it had been waiting for her without even knowing it. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, then looked at me with that same softness from the doorway. "Thank you," she whispered. I sat on the edge of the mattress, brushing a damp strand of hair away from her face. Her eyes fluttered shut at the touch, like she'd been longing for gentleness and finally found some. "There's always space for you," I said quietly. Her lips curved just slightly, the beginning of a smile, small but real. And in that moment it felt like letting her in wasn't just about sharing a bed. It was about giving her a place where she could breathe, where she didn't have to pretend, where she didn't have to be anything except herself, and I realized I'd make space for her 1,000 times over. When she climbed under the blanket, everything in the room seemed to shift as if acknowledging her presence. The air felt warmer, the quiet felt deeper, like the space itself had been holding its breath, waiting for her to finally come home. She moved carefully, almost shyly, settling on her side with that mixture of hesitation and need I'd seen in her only a handful of times. She wasn't fragile, not in the way people break. She was fragile in the way people who held themselves together for too long finally let go. She lay close enough that I could feel her breath warm against my chest, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine every time she exhaled. It wasn't accidental, but it wasn't bold either. It was the closeness of someone who wants comfort but is afraid to ask for too much of it. Her fingers shifted under the blanket, brushing lightly against my arm as if testing whether she was allowed to connect or if I might pull away. I wouldn't. I inched a little closer, closing the space she wasn't sure she had the right to close herself. "You're shivering," I murmured. "I know," she whispered back. "I'll stop, just give me a minute," but I didn't wait a minute. I pulled the blanket higher around her, tucking it carefully over her shoulders. She watched my hands move, her eyes following every small gesture like it meant more than it should. Maybe it did. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the rain tapping the window filled the room, a soft, steady rhythm that felt almost comforting. Her breathing matched it, slow, uneven at first, then settling into something steadier, calmer, like being here beside me let her finally exhale all the tension she'd been carrying. She shifted again, this time deliberately. Her head moved closer to my shoulder, her forehead brushing lightly against my arm, just enough to let me know she wasn't unsure anymore. "Is this okay?" she asked quietly, her voice soft but steady now. "It's perfect," I said. Her eyes softened, relief flickering across her face so quickly that if I hadn't been looking right at her, I might have missed it. She let her full weight rest into the mattress then, like she trusted it, trusted me. Slowly, she reached out, her hand finding mine beneath the blanket. Her fingers were cold at first, but she intertwined them with mine with a kind of tentative certainty, as if she'd been wanting to do it for a long time, but never let herself before. "You always make things feel less heavy," she whispered, almost like she was talking to the darkness instead of to me. I squeezed her hand gently. "That's because you never have to carry anything alone here," she breathed out, long and slow, her forehead settling against my shoulder in a way that felt deliberate, intimate, and deeply honest. Careful, but wanting. And for the first time that night, she finally let herself rest. "What if you said you wanted to stay forever?" I asked. The words left my mouth before I could second-guess them. They hung in the dim room like something fragile, something dangerous, something that could change everything if she chose to reach for it. I hadn't meant to say it out loud, not tonight, not when she was still trembling from the cold and whatever she'd escaped from, but watching her breathe beside me, watching the way she clung to quiet moments like they were lifelines. It just spilled out. She looked up at me slowly, like lifting her gaze meant lifting a weight she'd been carrying all night. Her cheeks were still flushed from the warmth of the blankets, her hair a messy halo on the pillow. She blinked once, twice, searching my face, looking for something, permission, reassurance, maybe even a place to land. Then she smiled. Not a quick smile, not a polite one. A slow, blooming curve of her lips, the kind that starts small and grows with certainty, like she'd been holding it back for longer than I realized. "What if I already have?" she whispered. The words hit me like a quiet earthquake, shifting everything without making a sound. My breath caught, my heartbeat stuttered, and for a moment I couldn't do anything except stare at her. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I did, completely. She moved closer, pressing her forehead to my chest, her hand sliding over my heart like she was trying to memorize its rhythm. I could feel her breathing through my shirt, steady now, no tremble left. As if admitting those words, admitting us, settled something inside her. "I didn't know how to say it," she continued softly, her voice muffled against me. "I didn't know if I should. I didn't want to push too fast or ask for too much. But being here, with you, it feels like the only place I don't have to pretend I'm fine." Her honesty wrapped around me like another blanket. She wasn't someone who opened up easily. She always kept parts of herself hidden, folded into quiet corners. But tonight she was letting them unfold one by one. And she was placing them right in my hands. I rested my chin lightly on top of her head. "You don't have to pretend anything here," I said. "Not now. Not ever." She breathed in sharply, like that meant more than she expected it to. She lifted her head just enough to look at me again, eyes warm, soft, full of something that felt dangerously close to love. "You make it too easy," she said, her smile returning. "Too easy to stay." I brushed my thumb across her cheek, feeling the warmth there. "Then stay," I whispered, "not just tonight. Stay as long as you want." She didn't hesitate this time. She slid her arms around my waist, pulling herself against me with a certainty that answered everything. "I already chose you," she murmured. "I just needed you to ask." And in that moment, with the rain fading and her heart pressed to mine, forever didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a promise.